Well, it's 6 o'clock. Hello, everybody. Glad to see you at City Hall today.
7 o'clock, man.
Yeah. I want to thank you all for coming. And I wanted to kind of kick it off by saying that I'm really very, very impressed that we're having the community meetings. And I offered this to the Albemarle Corporation so that all of the questions that you might have about the opening of this mine might be answered and get out in front. And they have dedicated themselves to make sure that all the answers or all the answers to questions are made. I wonder if the sound's on out there. It was the knob on the side. Okay. Anyway, can you hear? Okay, testing 1, 2, 3. Good. I thought maybe. So it's always better, and I wanted to say this. I wanted to make myself available anytime y'all have any questions whatsoever. If I don't know the answer, we're going to find it out. The best thing is to call and get the answers, and because I'm so glad that they decided to have the community meetings, because we want to get in front of rumors of things that are happening so that facts can be actually brought out. The rumor mill makes it tough when it gets on Facebook and all that. So we want to get the answers out for that. This is an exciting adventure for Kings Mountain. It's a good adventure for Kings Mountain. We have had mining in our community for over 80 years. So we have learned to live side by side with mining. Mining is going on today. I'll sit at my desk and Martin Marietta blast every single day, and it shakes me just a little bit. So in this lithium deposit is one of the richest ones in North America, along with something out in Nevada as well. So it's a part of national security. It's a part of the growing concern about the environment with electric vehicles being very first and foremost. So this is an important deposit. This pit was opened back in 1938. It had ceased operations, but there's some more lithium there. And I may be stealing some thunder, from them on their presentation, but I think there's 20 to maybe 30 years of deposit that's left of lithium. I kept joking with them that that's why we have such a calm community, because we got lithium water, But this is a great project. It's a project that is going to be great for our community so far as high-paying jobs, not entry-level jobs, but high-paying jobs. Albemarle is also very dedicated in getting an educated workforce, working with our community college and four-year institutions to make sure that within the 5 years, when they open it up, that we'll have a good workforce, that we'll have good paying jobs. Now, mining today is not like mining in 1938. Very much concentrated on doing it the right way, environmentally correct, and doing it as easy as possible on the environment. They will reclaim this land when they're done with it in 30 years. And I have complete confidence in them that this is exactly what's going to happen. Plus the fact that they're setting up an office in downtown Kings Mountain. Kirsten Martin's going to be a part of that. So you can go in and see how the project's going. They're going to go through a battery of all kinds of different permitting processes, studies so far as wells are concerned around the area. Everything, no stone will not be unturned in doing this process. But I think it's a great thing, and like I say, I make myself available. Just give me a call, and I will get you the answers that you have, if you've got any answers, after we have this presentation. Because it's important. It's important that we know what's going to happen in our community. And I want to also applaud y'all because of the fact that you're interested. This is not an apathetic community. We want this community to make sure that it stays the place that we love to work, live, and play. We want it to be this way. So I want to applaud y'all for your interest in this. I have been in a few meetings already and feel very, very comfortable with what's happening. It's a mine that's been open for years, and mining happening very close by. But I feel very confident that this can be done well, and it can be done side by side in helping us to have a bright future in our area. So with that, I'll turn it over, I guess, to Jennifer, okay? And thank you again for coming.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you all so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us. My name is Jennifer Diggins, and I'm the Director of Government and Community Affairs for Albemarle. And I see a lot of familiar faces in the room. And I just want to say, you know, I've been working for Albemarle for 5 years, and it has always been an absolute pleasure to spend time in Kings Mountain. You're all very welcoming, and we are just so proud of the investment that we have here today. So we've got, we want to give you a presentation today that will cover off on a lot of the really important critical topics. But first, talk a little bit about Albemarle values. We always start every single meeting within Albemarle with a safety share. And this meeting should be no different. So I would like to introduce you all to Jason Fisher. He is our site director for our Kings Mountain site, and he's going to come up and talk to you about gardening and lawn care safety, which is very appropriate. Jason?
Good evening. Thank you all for coming. So from those core values, the first is care. Care for our employees, care for the environment, and care for the community in which we work. To align with care, we put safety first, and so we do start every day, every shift, every meeting with a safety tailgate. Today, what I'd like to talk to you about is gardening or lawn care. Many of us do this. I just did it yesterday. Starting to warm up. Grass is starting to grow and it needs cut. The flowers are starting to bloom. The hedges need trimmed. What I want to speak to you about those tasks that we do is maybe highlight some of the potential hazards that may exist while you're out doing those tasks, and then provide some solutions that you may be able to use to mitigate those hazards. So what are some hazards that you might come across while you're out working in the garden or working in your lawn? You've got cuts, scrapes, potential for amputation. You've got ergonomic issues depending on what you're doing. You might be putting down some fertilizer or some weed and feed, so pesticides, so you have a chemical hazard. You may have some slips, trips, and falls depending on the terrain that you're working with. You've got the sun, heat, or cold. And you've got noise from the equipment that you might be using. So all of those hazards, how can we mitigate those? At work, at Albemarle, we've got some tools that we use, and I want to share those with you so that maybe you can take those tools back with you. Protect your friends and your family next time you go and work in your yard. So the first is scan. Survey, consider, act, and notify. So survey your surroundings. What type of hazards do you see? Maybe it's a loose brick in the pavement, or some poison ivy in the yard, or you've got your chainsaw and you've got hazards with that piece of equipment. Consider, what can I do? What might go wrong? So if I've got a loose brick in the pavement, I could trip over it. Or if I'm with the poison ivy, if I come in contact, I could have a burn. Or if I'm using the chainsaw, I could cut myself. The act, A, is the mitigation that I can take to avoid that outcome. So if it's a loose brick, hey, I can take a different sidewalk. Or maybe I put some PPE on, go from short sleeves to long sleeves to avoid coming in contact with that poison ivy. And then, hey, maybe I substitute out, instead of using a chainsaw, I use some clippers, reduce the risk. And that N is notify, and that's a really important one, especially if you're working with a teammate. Hey, if you see the hazard and you know the mitigation, communicate that, so that way that individual is also aware of the hazard and can take the same mitigation. Another tool that we'll utilize at Albemarle is the hierarchy of controls. So it's an inverse pyramid with the things at the top. They're more effective from a solution standpoint, working the way down to the bottom being least effective. So at the top, eliminate the hazard. Maybe I fix that loose brick, and so now it's no longer a slipping hazard. Or moving down, substitution. So like I talked about, we substitute out the tool. So from a higher risk of using a chainsaw, I moved to a more safer, less risk with some clippers. Of course, you have engineering controls or administrative controls, and finally you get to the bottom, which is PPE, personal protective equipment. So that should always be the last resort, but it is your last line of defense, and you want to make sure that you always have on the proper PPE. And something that we do at Albemarle to ensure that our folks are protected, even at home, is we have a take-home PPE policy. When we give out to our employees, we encourage them to take PPE home, whether it's cut-resistant gloves, safety glasses, hearing protection. We want folks to be safe at home just as much as they are at work. So I hope these are some solutions you can take when you find the hazards that have been mentioned here, so that next time when you're working out with your friends, your family, in your own yard, you can be safe as well. So thank you for listening, and I appreciate that you're here. Thank you.
So we have quite a few folks from Albemarle here tonight to talk to you. I think it's really important that you all meet the Albemarle team that will be working on this project. So tonight we're joined by Eric Norris, who's the president of our lithium division, Glenn Murfeld, who's our chief technology officer, Alex Thompson in the back, who's our vice president of lithium resources, me. We've got Trevor Chessel over here, who's heading up our permitting, Bill Everett, who is our group mining engineer, and Kirsten Martin, who is running the slideshow, the power behind the monitor. And a lot of you know Kirsten. She's a native Kings Mountain resident who recently moved back and has joined the Albemarle team, and we are thrilled and delighted to have her. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to give you all a brief description of who Albemarle is. I think we've been a very long time member of the community, but I think we need to take some time to really highlight all the exceptional work that's going on at the existing Kings Mountain facility. What we're doing today, what the potential for growth is in the future, and what that looks like from an environment point of view, from a permitting point of view. Talk about the community investment that we've made, and then we'll end with talking about our partnership with the Kings Mountain Gateway Trail, and for that, Shirley Brucko will be taking us through that partnership. So again, welcome to you all. For those of you that are outside, please know that when we get to the Q&A portion, we're gonna turn this podium around, and so everybody can feel free to come up and ask us questions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eric Norris, our president of our lithium business, to take you through an overview of Albemarle.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you all for coming. This is such a special occasion for us. This is, as you're going to learn, this opportunity for the Kings Mountain resource is an important potential investment. We believe it's a really exciting development for the community. And what I also want to hit on is it's extremely strategic for the U.S. Not just the southeastern U.S., not just the eastern half of the U.S., the U.S. This is a significant resource that can really help drive some independence for the U.S. when it comes to building electric vehicles. So first, let me just describe a little bit about Albemarle. As described here on this slide, Albemarle is a global leader in lithium and in the refined products that come off of the lithium resources, such as the one here in Kings Mountain. Many of you probably know this. This resource here at Kings Mountain was first commissioned right after World War II as part of the Manhattan Project for the production of lithium-6 for the hydrogen bomb. So it's been strategic to the U.S. for some time. But today, we look at it as an opportunity to reinvigorate it, restart it for the purposes of electric vehicles. Albemarle, though, is part of a bigger corporation. We have a couple of other businesses. We have a bromine business. We have a catalyst business. We serve not only energy storage, electric vehicles through our lithium business, we serve the electronics industries, pharmaceutical industries, and other industries through the other businesses. And at the root of what we do are the values: care, curiosity, courage, collaboration, humility, transparency, and integrity, as well as a strong sense of doing things the right way, as Jennifer was saying, from a sustainability point of view. We believe that starting up Kings Mountain is the right thing to do now, and I'll get into those details. And we believe doing it with the most advanced technologies and with sustainability in mind is paramount. We exist as a business, we grow as a business because of the importance that lithium can represent to decarbonizing our economy. We can't go about decarbonizing the economy and do that in an unsustainable way. So that's fundamental to how we have to operate. So that's who Albemarle is. Why don't we go to the next slide, please? You've probably read some of these things here. I'm learning here. I have to change the slide here as well. It doesn't automatically change for me. So my cheat sheet. You've probably seen many of these clippings about the importance of lithium in the domestic industry for domestic security of the supply chain. We are in a very uncertain time in the world. I don't have to explain any of that to you. When I first came into the industry 30 years ago, and I've been in the chemicals industry for various companies, including Albemarle recently, I entered in a period of rapid globalization where things can be made in one part of the world and moved to the other. We're increasingly in a world where that's not viewed as a wise decision. There's risks involved in doing that. And as this industry develops, you'll see things like the Department of Energy taking action to shore up the supply chain. The White House announcing the importance of investments in critical minerals so that it can be secured here in the U.S. as opposed to somewhere else like China. And you'll see there's a lot of Asian production in the supply chain today that we're at risk of being dependent upon if we don't develop this ourselves. And you'll also see that there's a real concern from all corners of government and now increasingly from industry about that location of the supply chain. So if you then consider lithium and its many uses, you'll realize why this is so important. Yes, it is used in electric vehicles, and I'm going to describe in a moment how exciting that growth is. Look, I didn't see a whole lot of them driving out here. I drive an electric vehicle myself, but they're coming. I visited with many automotive producers, including 3 major producers just last week. They've stopped investing in the internal combustion engine. Every major automotive producer has decided that this is what they need to do. So it's coming. But lithium is everywhere. It's used in many aspects of our lives. For decades, we've been producing lithium hydroxide and other lithium derivatives here at Kings Mountain, not from a resource. We've imported the resource either from Nevada or from Chile and then processed it here. More recently, we've expanded our R&D and battery materials innovation center. And Glenn, my colleague, is going to talk about that in a moment. But these are the plethora of uses where lithium goes. It goes into a lot of critical areas, and I won't enumerate them all on this slide, for industry around the world. It's a reason it's so critical to our supply chain. More specifically, lithium hydroxide is used in a number of different products that you are familiar with, may own, or may be considering buying, hopefully someday in the future. Up on the top left is the ubiquitous pickup truck that is found around the United States, and is certainly a good number here in Kings Mountain as well. And now they're being made with electric motors, having the torque that exceeds that of a diesel engine and having the range that matches that of a gasoline-powered engine. Very exciting, but also things like power tools, grid storage, consumer electronics. Lithium is the lightest metal known to man and one of the highest charge density elements there is, such that it can hold many times its weight and energy, which makes it so important. And lithium hydroxide is the key building block that allows these high energy density batteries that are so important for range in electric vehicles. So if we then go to the next slide, and then go back to that question of, well, where does all that hydroxide really come from, Eric? You talked about making some here, but you also said that it comes from Chile and to a large degree. Well, this map shows you trade flows, and yes, Asia's right in the middle of it. And there's some reasons for that. This industry was built in Asia. By this industry, I mean the lithium-ion battery industry. Batteries today, the vast majority, 95% of them, have been made in Asia. Many of those technologies were invented in the U.S. The U.S. lost interest in investing in them, and then in the 1990s, they were perfected first by Sony, later by Korean companies like Samsung and LG, and now by large Chinese conglomerates like CATL and BYD. And that has been a center of gravity for this industry. So yes, everything we're carrying around, including the cell phone, the battery was made in Asia. So the supply chain needs to be in Asia, right? That's where the demand is. That's been Albemarle's way of operating for many years, is supplying that industry. And so we're either shipping it from Chile, shipping it from Australia, processing it to serve the customers in that part of the world. Well, that's changing. And you can see, if you look at that bottom right, just how much versus North America that supply chain is. With the growth in electric vehicles, we can see it coming. There's significant investment required up and down the supply chain, and it's starting to happen. If you've been watching the news, and believe me, this is news I watch all the time, which is who's announced what, which electric vehicle, which battery, which plant. A great number of the battery plants are being announced in the southeastern U.S. So North Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina, Volvo, Ford, Toyota, and their partner companies all building in the southeastern U.S. There's others in the Detroit area and still others in other parts of the United States. And what we're also seeing now, if the OEM, the battery, the car that's made is all the way on the right-hand side of this slide, you go back a step, the battery is now being made here, and now some of these other materials, the cathode and anode, our announcements are coming for them to be built here. It's now time for us to localize our supply chain. And that brings us to this resource. This resource is special. It was once critical. This area, for those of you who've lived here for many decades, know this once was the hub of the Western lithium industry. For economics, that supply chain left because there were lower cost resources discovered in Chile and South America. Those have been fully tapped now. The industry needs to grow, it needs to localize, and here we have Kings Mountain sitting here as that opportunity. So here's just a little bit of what I was showing a moment ago. It's the sheer growth of what's possible. A Kings Mountain could supply 1 million to 1.5 million electric vehicles. That's not insignificant. You consider that 6 million electric vehicles were sold last year, and that's worldwide. Probably only a third or 20% of that was in the US. About half of what was sold last year can be produced from Kings Mountain, making it very strategically significant to the US and very important for Albemarle going forward. So this US supply chain we view as very important. And what I'd like to do next is turn it over to Glenn to talk a little bit more about the technology side of this and where we've been as a company from a technology point of view. Glenn?
Thanks, Serge. So I just have a few slides, and it really, with the first one, the next one here, I'm going to chronicle a little bit of the history, and then the 2 slides after that, I'm going to talk about what we're actively doing at Kings Mountain today. So this is a pretty cool chart, I think, because it takes you back to the beginning, and it was in the late 1800s when they first discovered some of these outcroppings of spodumene. You could identify something special was going on here. And as Eric mentioned before, it was in the 1940s that we actually started producing lithium from this resource. That was used to support the Manhattan Project. So pretty seminal history right here in Kings Mountain. In the center part of the century, though, a lot of that lithium actually went more towards the power industry, nuclear power plants, and so it had a significant role there. The predecessor to Albemarle was a number of different companies, but Rockwood Lithium Holdings was one of them. And in the late 80s, as you heard before, the world was expanding, and they had discovered some other forms of lithium in South America and in Chile that were actually a lot more economical. And so the mine here was idled, as you heard before, in the 80s. But we didn't stop doing work here in Kings Mountain at all. And in fact, I'm going to highlight a little bit more in the next couple of slides what we're actually doing. But you can see at the rightmost image on this graph, we acquired Rockwood Lithium Holdings in 2015. So that's a quick chronicle of just tremendous history. Next chart. But what I wanted to show here then, and then this next aerial photo is a pretty good shot because you can get to see a lot of the acreage there. In the upper left-hand corner, you can see the pit that's now filled with water. And it's a pretty big site here. We have about 800 acres associated with that. So you all are familiar with the mine and the potential as a resource now. What you may not be familiar with the fact is that we actually have some absolutely world-class facilities there today. We make some of the highest purity lithium hydroxide in the world. It's used for high-performance batteries. You'll find those in your cell phones and in the emerging EVs. So that's something you may not be familiar with that we do at the site. Additionally, and by the way, I wanted to point out, see, if you look at the buildings there in the blue, those are the conversion plant facilities. That's where we take lithium that comes from other parts of the world. And some of that lithium we get in Silver Peak, Nevada. It comes from Brine Resources there. We ship that form of lithium here to Kings Mountain. Additionally, we bring in some lithium from South America, from Chile. We bring it into our facility here, and we upgrade it. We make a very high purity form of lithium hydroxide. It makes some of the highest quality batteries in the industry today. So that's a really killer part of the industry of our site here. The other site the other building that I want to highlight here is the facility that's kind of in the center right of the image. This is our Global Technology Center, and we built that around 12 years ago. So it's absolutely state-of-the-art type facility. We're working on research on advanced forms of lithium that'll make batteries even safer. It'll make them longer range, and be able to make cell phones that last longer and EVs that go farther. And to that point, that image that I'm showing you there, it's the circle with the orange around it. Those are actual pictures of lithium in its metallic form. That's just one of the many forms of lithium that we make in this facility. But one of the things that I wanted to highlight in my last chart is talk a little bit more about the actual research that we do in that building. And so the final chart that I have here this is a picture on the right-hand side. That's the entrance to our facility. We're very proud of it. We're very proud to bring in our customers. Our customers are many of the leading electric vehicle companies and battery companies that you know about and you read about. They like to come here and see what we're doing in terms of advanced materials. On the right-hand side, this is sort of an illustration of some of the key components that you'll find in a battery today. Cathode, anode, and something that separates them. I'm not going to go into those details, but what I really did want to emphasize is you can see all the little lines that are going into the schematic. Those are all advanced forms of lithium that we're making happen in the research laboratory today. So again, we're really proud to be part of the community. A lot of our employees live right here, and they're excited about not only what they do every day to make batteries better, but the potential that the mine could mean to the community. So with that, I'm going to hand it over back to Jennifer, I guess.
And just a note for our presenters, I'm told it's very hard to hear out in the lobby, so when we talk, let's make sure we project, and sorry about that it's difficult to hear. We didn't realize we would be blessed with such an interested group tonight, so I'm really glad that you're all here. Next up, I'm going to introduce Alex Thompson. He's our Vice President of Resources, and he's going to go into detail about the potential growth at the site.
Great, thank you, Jen. And good evening, everyone. It's a real privilege to be here this evening. Alex Thompson is my name. I am Vice President, Lithium Resources for Albemarle. I'm a mining engineer by background. I started my career working out back in Australia, and I've worked on some fantastic mine sites and projects over the years, but nothing really excites me as much as what we have here in our backyard here in Kings Mountain. You heard from the Mayor, you've heard from Eric. This site has a very rich operating history, dating back to the late 30s and all the way through to the 1980s. It is one of the most significant lithium deposits in North America. And this picture behind me, I think, is a really good representation of what this site used to look like. It's changed a lot since then. The vegetation has grown over the previous operation. I'm sure there are many of you in this room that have had family members that have worked in this particular operation, who may work there today, or may have even worked or walked the Gateway Trail and gone up on Cardio Hill, which in your picture on the left wasn't there 30, 40, 50 years ago. We have a great opportunity here, and we're here to talk to you about that potential restart and really want to start that dialogue with you all. You're all very important stakeholders for us. You're very important to our success as an organisation and our success with this particular project. As a company, we haven't made a decision as yet to proceed with this project. We continue to evaluate it. We very much would like to proceed with this project, but we wanted to bring you all here together this evening to talk about the work that we're going to be doing. You're going to start to see an uptick in activity. You're going to start to see more people around the site. You're going to start to see people in high visibility vests wandering around the facility, wandering around the community. And you may be wondering what they're there to do. We want to start that dialogue. Today we'll start by sharing with you our work plans and what that's going to look like. But also we wanted to reassure you that any restart of this operation is going to be done in line with industry best practices and sustainability initiatives. It's important to us as a company that we do it right, and it's important for the community in which we operate that we do it right as well. Our priorities may not necessarily be the same priorities as yourselves. There may be some disconnects in terms of what we think is important and what you think is important. And again, this is why we're here today, is to open up that dialogue, to create that opportunity for you to bring your questions, to bring what you may have read on social media and ask us, is this true? It's an opportunity for us to bring you along that journey so that we all have a part in this project's success. In the top right-hand picture, and I've got a little bit of it in my hand here today, this is what we're after. This is some of the drill core from the Kings Mountain property, and I will make it available if people would like to come and have a look at it. But this is what we would ultimately be extracting from this property. That property has been in operation. You can see from the picture in the bottom right there, I think a lot of that is underwater today, but there is a rich operating history here. And really, I think this is what differentiates us from many other projects around, is that our initial operations are going to be predominantly focused in areas that have previously been in operation, and we're going to be doing things that are no different to what happens next door. We heard the Mayor talk about the little shape that he gets. We're going to be deploying industry best practices. We're going to be deploying the best sustainability practices, and we're going to be doing this in the right way. People are probably coming here tonight asking, how big is this going to be? How long is it going to operate for? This is all subject to feasibility. We want your input into those plans. We are looking at a myriad of configurations and a myriad of pathways to bring this into production. But we really want to make sure that we're factoring in your concerns, your ideas. I've had the privilege of sitting in on a number of meetings with the community already, where already there are things that have come to light that are great ideas that we think we should be incorporating into our project development. And really welcome you all this evening, and not just this evening, but into the future, to continue to bring your ideas. We will have an information centre that will be opening downtown, and that's going to be a drop-in where you can go in at any time and ask us how this project is progressing. But we are very excited about this opportunity. We're excited to share more as time goes on. But really, oops, it's not changing on my screen. That's why I was looking for it to change. So my apologies. But I think I've spoken to this already, but your input is essential to our success. It's essential to our operating plan development. It's essential to our permit preparation. We are still many years away from submitting our permit, but we want to make sure that the permits that we submit are reflective of the collective input of you all here. We want to make sure that we can identify those win-win solutions and make sure that everybody feels as though they have a stake in this project's success. This picture down the bottom is a great picture. It's one that I took, I think, just before the winter. But you can see there, Cardio Hill. That is a remnant from the old operation. This is what the operation would look like once we finish with it as well, many years into the future. But as you can see, we have a long history here. There's a real desire on our part and from my team and the team here at Albemarle to do this the right way and make sure that everybody here has a seat at the table when it comes to how we take this forward. So where are we in this process? Well, we found it. It was found back in the 1800s. We've also done some work where we've acquired some of this drill core that's helped inform our knowledge base of the deposit today. And we're sitting there in the development studies phase. There's a lot of environmental baseline that Trevor's going to talk about. There's a lot of detailed economic impacts that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the socio impacts. We're going to talk about the permitting time horizons. But there's a lot of work that's going to take place in this phase before we even consider taking this into a construction phase and ultimately operation. So, very much looking forward to the ongoing conversation. It's a real privilege to be here. We really thank you for your time. I'm very excited about this project, and I'm going to hand over to Trevor, who's going to talk a little bit more about our environmental and permitting efforts.
Thanks. Welcome, everyone. My name is Trevor Chessel. I'm an environmental engineer, and I'm the manager of environment and permitting for Albemarle. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the environmental assessments that we're going to be starting up this year, as well as our high-level expectations on permitting as we push through our pre-feasibility assessments that Alex mentioned and onward with some of the community engagement. Before I get there, though, I'd like to introduce the standard and certification process that we're going to be using as we push through our pre-feasibility studies, look at some of the engineering options, and make some of our key critical decisions around responsible mining. So the initiative is called IRMA, or the Initiative for Responsible Mining Assurance. It's one of the most comprehensive standards and certification processes available today for the resources industry. And two of the reasons, why it's one of the most comprehensive is A, when it was developed over a 10-year period, they reached out to a number of international NGOs, communities that live and work around mining operations, unions, mineral producers like us, Albemarle, and also the purchasers of those materials. In addition, not only did they develop 800 standards that represent the core fundamental requirements of IRMA, but they also pulled standards from various international organizations like the UN Guiding Principles for Human Rights, some of the mineral extraction transparency initiatives, and other sustainability initiatives from the World Bank. So it's very comprehensive, and we're really excited to implement it here at Kings Mountain as we push through these development opportunities. And I'd like to say that Albemarle are also the first lithium producer to go through a IRMA certification process. So we've started a self-assessment process at our Salar de Atacama in Chile. It was completed earlier this year, and we'll go through a IRMA transparency study as well this year as well. We're also rolling out IRMA at our joint venture operations in Australia, and those being Greenbushes and Wodgina. If anyone is interested to learn more about IRMA, feel free to visit their website at responsiblemining.net, and you can reach out to us at Albemarle or IRMA directly. They're very approachable. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the process that we're going to be taking, and before I get there, I'll give you a little bit of a description of what a pre-feasibility is. So in these development projects, whether you're building a mine or a shopping mall or a highway development, typical engineering studies go through various stages of assessment, and the first is pre-feasibility. So in the pre-feasibility studies, you look at a variety of different development options and look at the economics, the environmental impacts, and the social impacts for a variety of different options. So you may have option A through F, and you evaluate each of those independently. Once you finish up pre-feasibility, you then align to a preferred alternative and move into feasibility, where you assess that engineering in detail. From feasibility, you move into detailed design and then into construction. So this flow chart here summarizes how we're going to approach our pre-feasibility study here at Kings Mountain. And one of the very first steps that we have is collecting environmental baseline data. So you all know that the data that we'll be collecting on the site will represent existing conditions for air quality, water quality, dust, noise, vibrations, and biodiversity. Once we have that information, we'll be able to proceed into looking at some of those development alternatives through our pre-feasibility study. Each of those mine development options, and for example, one option may be a difference in the pit geometry, one option might be a difference in the plant location or some of the technologies that we're using to mitigate environmental impacts. Those are a few examples. But once we have all of our development options, we'll start looking at each of them individually and assessing the detailed environmental impacts that could happen. And more importantly, what actions we can take to mitigate those impacts. So it's an iterative process, and you'll see here, as Alex and others have mentioned, we do intend to bring the community along in that. So when we're developing, first collecting the environmental data, we'll share that publicly on our website. And when we're going through the different various options for the development and their respective environmental impacts, we will share that and harness your input on each. From there, once we finish that, community engagement and the environmental impact process will hopefully align on a preferred alternative and move into the permit application process. So this is just a quick list of some of the environmental work that we have planned for the next 24 months. On the left-hand side is all of that environmental data collection that we need to start collecting. So it includes cultural resource surveys. We need to do some archaeological assessments on the site where there hasn't been previous disturbance from mining and see if there's any significant cultural resources there that we want to avoid or mitigate. We'll go through threatened and endangered species studies and biological surveys to make sure that we understand the complexity around any sensitive species that are in the area. On the water side, we'll complete a public well survey, and we'll also start gauging surface water across the facility. So we'll start measuring flows in Kings Creek and any tributaries that flow across our property. As the mayor mentioned, we have a lot of groundwater monitoring to put in place. So we'll be executing some drilling across the property to give us that really thorough and comprehensive environmental baseline to represent those existing conditions. We'll also start our water quality monitoring program once we have those wells in place and start monitoring on site for air and noise. So one of the things that we want to have a handle on is what are the current air and noise impacts from Highway 85 and the adjacent rock quarry. Other than that, some others are the visual resource surveys. So we've already started some of this work, taking photographic pictures across key vantage points in Kings Mountain. And what we use that for is to see what the visual resources are now, and we can use that information to make sure that in our design, our impact of those visual view sheds isn't significant. You'll probably ask about traffic surveys. We'll also monitor and start some more traffic surveys so we can, again, assess what potential impact we might have with our additional employees coming onto the site and our product being shipped off. And we can work with the municipality to make any infrastructure requirements that may be needed. Once we have that data, we go into pretty comprehensive impact assessments. So those include surface water models, groundwater models, air quality models, and various other assessments to really get a firm handle on which is the best alternative that we should push forward. Okay, on the permitting requirements, well, first off, we have not reached out to any regulatory agencies. We wanted to sit down with you today and introduce the project to the community before we have any preliminary introductions for regulatory agencies. With that said, we're expected to go through both federal, state, and county permitting in various forms. We think that the National Environmental Protection Act, or NEPA, will be our primary federal process that we'll follow for this project. And depending on the scenario, there's 3 different agencies that might be involved as the primary agency that puts us through permitting. There's also 2 federal pathways, either an environmental assessment or an environmental impact assessment. And once we submit our applications, the agencies will go through that process and determine which is most appropriate. On the state and county permitting, we'll have multiple permits, a mining permit, an air permit. It's going to be a pretty lengthy list, but ultimately we won't have the full comprehensive list and understanding around that until we advance our pre-feasibility study a little further. I know you'll ask a bit about timing. Our pre-feasibility assessment is expected to take about 2 years. So right now we're expecting somewhere around the end of 2023, we would be at a place where we have that preferred alternative identified and all the technical assessments and environmental impact assessments completed to a point where we're comfortable submitting any kind of permit application. From there, the permitting process will follow its own path, but will take several years to go from there. So looking ahead in our 90-day window, we just wanted to give you a sense of what kind of activities we'll have on site. And those are that comprehensive list of data collection activities that I presented earlier. I won't go through these, but these are the actions we've got in the next quarter. So between now and the next town hall, when we sit down with you, these are the activities that we'll be taking care of. So you'll see lots of people in reflective vests and safety gear out on the Gateway Trail. Don't hesitate at all to reach out to them and ask what they're doing or who they're working for. And by no means don't hesitate to reach out to our community team if you have further questions. A little bit outside the 90-day window, we will be executing our drilling program, and my colleague Bill will take you through that.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bill Everett. I'm Group Mining Engineer. As part of the project that we have, we're going to be doing some drilling to support Trevor's activities. As you may remember, back in 2018, we had a drilling program where we were drilling the ore deposit. We're going to continue that with additional drilling this year. That will start probably roughly in June and extend out through November. As you can see, the top picture here, you can see the mine presently with water in it. The drilling activity that we have taking place will be within the project boundary, all on our property. And you'll probably see these drill rigs maybe around the property at various points. Drilling both wells and also drill holes to check for our geotechnical information that we need to collect for the environmental work. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Jennifer.
Thanks, Bill. I think one of the common themes we've been talking about throughout this is the importance of our community affairs and our community involvement. So let's talk a little bit around what this looks like for the future. So if we were to move forward with this project, we believe that it would create more than 200 construction jobs and more than 200 full-time, highly skilled jobs. What does that mean? Well, it means a lot of engineers, chemical, electrical, mechanical, and mining engineers, geologists and metallurgists, environmental, health and safety, administrative professionals, welders, operators, a really robust workforce. We recognize the importance of creating a local workforce as well. So Albemarle is committed to working with our schools, both all the high schools in the county, as well as the community colleges, to understand how we can support further development of the STEM program and make it more robust. We would like to work with them to also offer internships and scholarships, and we believe we can partner with them on creating engineering and mining opportunities within the school system, and that's really what we're working towards now. So, this is the first open community forum we've had, but I think as you've gathered from the previous speakers tonight, we've been a part of this community for a long time. Since 2016, our employees have donated over $715,000 to the nonprofits in the local community, and those are all listed out on the right. Our employees have donated over 1,500 hours in volunteer efforts. We're committed to this community, we're committed to our employees, and we hope to continue, as we say, grow the good, which is the name of our foundation. So before I turn it over to Shirley to come up and talk about the partnership that we have with the Kings Mountain Gateway Trail, we understand that this project may have some community impacts, and one of them will be the impact to the Gateway Trail. I'm sure everybody in this room has walked the trail at some point or another. Shirley tells me all the time it gets 60,000 visitors a year. And when you have come around the corner, I think you've all had a bird's eye view into our pit and our operations. And so from a safety standpoint, as we if we do restart the mine, we have to think about how we create that buffer. And so part of that is understanding how we can reroute the trail. to not only expand the offerings we have, but also create that safety and that buffer that's really critical for how we want to run a sustainable mining organization. So we are actively working with the Kings Mountain Gateway Trail. We are identifying solutions that we will bring to you at a future meeting so that we can also solicit your input. But with that, I'd like to turn it over to Shirley to come on up and say some things about the trail. You know, I think everybody in the city knows Shirley. The Gateway Trail is really her vision and her sheer determination in bringing it into existence.
Well, I never dreamed that the Gateway Trail would be involved with active lithium, but here we are. And I know most of you all in this room and probably a lot of those out there in the hall. And it is my pleasure to speak to you all about what's going on. Jennifer has absolutely been a wonderful person from Albemarle for me to work with. Trevor, I've never met him before, but I've seen him on the screen. And so, Trevor, we need to get to know each other. Yeah. And then our newest addition over here, I know her daddy well and her mom. Yes, and Alex, it's been a pleasure working with you. So I've been working with all these Albemarle people for quite a while. And I do see some trail folks in here too, and I couldn't even be standing here if it wasn't for my team that I work with. Mary Wade Smith is in here. Is there anyone else from the trail committee here yet? They're probably out there in the hall. So I want to tell you a little bit about the trail. Over 20 years ago, I had the desire to bring tourists to Kings Mountain. And we already had the Battle of Kings Mountain from 1780. And if we just had a place for a trail to connect Kings Mountain to the area parks, then we would be like Abingdon, Virginia. I don't know if you all are familiar with that area or not, but they have the Creeper Trail, and they have the Barter Theater. So I felt like we had that too. We've got the Joy Theater downtown, and we've got the 3 area parks that we could make a trail to, and we had the Battle of Kings Mountain. So my husband and I went to Abingdon, Virginia, years ago, and we actually took a tour, and we really liked what we saw, and we decided we could do that here in Kings Mountain, and I invited the planner for that area to come here and talk to 60 people at the Joy Theater, and he was very impressed. He said, absolutely, you all can do this here too. But I didn't know that where the trail was going to go would be a situation. So here's the situation that we've got. We have 7 miles of trail, and I believe I saw one of our most walked person. Where's Gene White? Gene. He's walked more miles on the trail than anybody in this whole region has walked on that trail. And he kept up with his miles. And one of these days he'll have to tell everybody about it. Anyway, we picked this area because it was wooded and available and open. Martin Marietta gave us our trail parking lot. And then Foot Mineral Company, that was the name of it before Albemarle, they love trails. They were out of Germany, and Germany has tons of trails like this. And one of the ladies came over that was big with Foot Mineral, and she said, absolutely, we've got a trail. So we opened up with 2.5 miles of trail in 2009, 3 loops that a lot of you all have walked on, I'm sure. And then a little bit later on, we opened up 4.5 miles of the foot trail, which is on top of Albemarle lithium property. And it's gorgeous. We have beautiful trails, wooded. A lot of it goes along streams, and some lakes, and we have beavers. We have beavers. Be sure and find our beavers when you're down there. But it's absolutely gorgeous, and a lot of people that use that part of the trail are bikers. And bikers are very, very familiar with our area because they can go in the parking lot, get on their bikes, head down to Galilee Church Road, and then they can even go around on 161 and come back through downtown Kings Mountain. So the trail is an economic development as well as a tourism attraction for this area. And we do have 60 to 80,000 people on the trail every year. We are part of the Rails to Trails for North Carolina. We are part of we were the first Carolina Thread Trail in Cleveland County to be designated, and we are a national recreation trail site for the United States, and I'm sure that some of you all don't know that. But this is a very, very important situation for Kings Mountain. It really is. And it's making our people healthier. Not only that, we are adding to the environment with 2 beautiful, very large butterfly gardens. One is by Albemarle Lithium, and the other one is by Duke Energy. Those are our partners that we work with all the time. Then the Gateway Trail contributes big time to all of that, and we have individuals in the community that give to the butterfly gardens all the time. As you know, we are on the Monarch Butterfly Highway for the United States, and it comes right through Kings Mountain, and we've had a lot of caterpillars and monarchs at the trail, and we've even released a lot of them. I don't know if they stay here or not, but, we don't know where they went. It's okay. So anyway, Albemarle Lithium will probably be closing 4.5 miles of our trail, but we get to keep open the 3 loops. The parking lots will stay open, but Albemarle Lithium has said that they would very much like to replace the 4.5 miles that they will be closing off. That it will be bigger and better than ever. So, even though we are a little bit disappointed, that's very exciting. And you can tell that I love a challenge. So, it sounds like to me that we're getting ready to have a big challenge, and Jennifer and I are going to be really good friends, or we're going to beat each other up. I don't know which. But anyway, I hope that all of you all will get out and get on the trail now for the next at least 4 years, right? But even after that, hopefully we're going to start building 4.5 more miles of trail. And actually, I'm going to be working with a feasibility study starting Thursday. And then we have already mapped out some areas that we would very much like for the new trail to go on. So we'll keep what we've got at the front part, and then we'll head out, and thinking right now that City Lake might be our new destination. But so that's it, and if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. Just get out and walk that trail. Oh, there we do have a question.
I'm George Carpenter. You saying we're going to keep the hills, Cardiac Hill and the other hill, Plateau Hill?
Yes, the Plateau and the Cardio and the Bamboo Trail will all stay open, and the main parking lot, the restroom facilities and office, and the big parking lot across the street, all of that will stay.
I was walking that trail even before it started in 2009. I got ahead of when it first opened. I was sneaking around there.
Well,
We do have police in the room, so.
So the trail going toward Cardiac Hill that's right behind Hounds, is that the one that is going to stay open?
no, that will close.
The one that goes to the woods?
The one that goes behind Hounds Campground,
Yeah.
that's where it'll be closed, and there is an idea of having a large platform right there with an educational pictures and design So children and adults can go there and know what's going on with the lithium and the geological part of.
If Cardio Hill is staying, Cardiac Hill, how do we get there then? How do you get there?
There's a bamboo trail, that goes past the bamboo.
Yeah.
Okay, when you get to the end of there is a workout station, and you can go to the left and go up Cardio or to the plateau, but if you go to the right, then that will be closed off. Okay, thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Shirley. I just want to note that it is our intention to have the new trail constructed before the existing trail is closed. So our goal is to not create any disruption and make sure that you've got something that's even better than what you have today by the time there'll be an impact. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. I would just like to say that if you can see on this slide, you've got my contact information, you've got Kirsten's. We actually have a dedicated website for the project. Our goal is within the next 6 months to open an information center in downtown Kings Mountain, and that will be open for anybody in the public to come in and ask questions. As we move through the project, we will have videos, we will have displays, we will provide all the information of where we are in this project. So if you'll bear with me for a moment, I'm going to turn this podium around, and I ask that as you come up to ask your questions, please give us your name and tell us where you're from.
Great question. So IRMA actually, one of their principles is transparency. So we have to disclose any kind of community complaints, anything like that, on our website. And yes, we'll commit to it. And one of the things that IRMA is unique compared to other certification processes is they come and do third-party audits of our operations after we're up and running. The thing that's unique is when they come and audit our site, they actually come and talk to the community as well to make sure that the community is still on board with the operation of the project. So it's a pretty comprehensive governance system that we'll be using. So yes, we'll absolutely stick with it. And they have standards that apply for the development phase where we're in right now. They've got another standard for the operation phase, which is not draft, it's final, and enclosure as well, which covers it covers all those life cycles that Alex had talked about.
Yeah, great question, and thank you very much for raising it. I assume that there are many of you here today that have a very similar question, and the answer is we want to work with you around how we mitigate our impacts. I think one of our concerns is we want to be a good corporate citizen. You're very close to an existing operation today. We'll probably be a little bit closer, so there are potentially going to be some disruptions. I think it's about having that conversation. We probably need to sit down and have a conversation with you around what are some of the things that we'll be doing, what timeframes they may be impacting, and how we minimise those things. I know there have been a number of conversations around blasting as an example, and what that may mean, and I think that's probably one of the most obvious potential impacts. Bill has assured me that blasting is not like it was done in the old days. It's come a long way, and we will be very conscious and very deliberate in terms of how we engage and how we operate to make sure that those of you there today can continue to maintain that quality of life. And I think as we advance through this process, it's about you being aware of what we're doing, us understanding what your concerns are, and figuring out how we sort of coexist together into the future. No, we don't want to chase you out of your home. We're not going to be doing anything like that. Our primary concern and why we've been reaching out to a number of you is we think that our operations have the potential impact to impact your quality of life, and it's about working out those issues.
Thanks for that. You would have seen on our environmental data collection list, one of the components that we need to, or actually have been trying to collect data for the last 3 months, but will continue, is getting a comprehensive data set around any public wells that are still in operation. So as you know, most of Kings Mountain is on municipal water, but we have identified some wells within a 2 and 4 mile radius that we have to investigate and see if there would be any impacts. And the way we do that is by first drilling those monitoring wells that I mentioned earlier. The information from those wells across our property gives us information where we can model that impact. Fortunately, we're in a very hard rock geology here. So basically, as you can imagine, water doesn't flow through rocks quickly. So any kind of dewatering of our pit as mining progresses, we don't expect it to have large regional impacts. But to be truthful, those are assessments that we need to look at during our pre-feasibility study. So we've got to do a lot more work. First, we have to identify that technical data, start grabbing that information in the field to give us the data that we need to model. Then we need to model the potential impacts from a technical perspective, and then we can share that information and talk about it further.
Okay, thank you.
But outside of your question asked about outside of Kings Mountain,
Yes.
we don't think
Yes.
there would. I don't think there would be any major
won't be,
regional
yeah.
impacts from.
Okay.
Yeah, we still need to do the technical work, but we don't envision any regional impacts from dewatering of our pit.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're starting quarterly monitoring now to give us that baseline information, and any kind of water that's discharged in the environment has to, typically go through quarterly or monthly type testing. It just depends on which permit it's linked to.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. So that property, if I'm correct, is the one that's right next to the plastics factory and essentially runs all the way through. I'm here seeing some nodding heads. So right now, we don't have any plans for that property as part of this project. It's a property that Albemarle acquired probably about 4 years ago, and we are not focused on that property today. I think a lot of our initial activities are going to be focused in and around our existing site, but right now we're not in any sort of considerations or discussions around that property. A good question. So again, at this stage, and we're all going through these feasibility studies, and we're definitely not going to develop these plans in a dark room and sort of come out one day and say that this is what's going to happen. Right now, that is not part of our consideration. It's not part of our current thinking in terms of how this would go forward. And really, I think from where I sit today, I think it's quite unrealistic that anything would really take place on that property now or into the future. Yes, that is something that we are thinking about, and that's probably one of the other impacts for the Gateway Trail and why we've been having these conversations with them. That is actually our bridge. I think we're probably the only company in North Carolina that owns a bridge across an interstate. But yes, that is one of the things that we are trying to figure out how it would fit into our operating plans, and ultimately depends on the infrastructure placement. Again, we're sort of working through all these options, and we will be working with everyone here as we finalise those to make sure that we have everyone's input into what that might look like. I'm going to hand over to Trevor to talk about that one.
Yeah, so obviously it needs to go somewhere. We can't mine a wet pit, so the pit needs to be dewatered so we can actually access it for the mining equipment. We're currently looking at different alternatives. Ideally, we can find another commercial alternative for it. So if you know anyone looking for water for a few years, please let us know. But that would be the ultimate, the best outcome, I think, for us. It's actually fairly clean. Yeah, we're still collecting environmental data and sampling it quarterly to get a better handle on it. But it is fairly clean water. So the alternative would be getting what's called a NIPDES permit, and that will allow us to discharge it to environment. And we've got a lot of technical studies to do before we can even apply for that permit. We need to make sure that if we discharge it to a creek or tributary anywhere downstream, the water quality meets the regulatory requirements, and the flow rate that we discharge at isn't going to cause any erosion or damage to ecosystems downstream. So lots of technical work to do before we're, again, all ready to apply for that permit.
Yeah, We haven't had any discussions around changing the zoning. It is what it is. It's a beautiful lot. It's got an old gold mine on it as well. Please don't jump the fence and fall down a mine shaft. I think there's a rich history that's there. But at this stage, our focus is on our properties where we operate today and on the other side of the interstate, utilising that bridge.
Yeah, good question. So we need to assess it. And again, those are all the technical assessments that we'll be doing from our pre-feasibility study. But I just want to reiterate, this mine is going to be developed in hard rock, and water does not flow through hard rock easily. So we're expecting very low flow rates when we try and keep that pit dewatered. And all of that water that we pull from the pit, once we're in operation, will actually be used in the process plant. So any kind of surface water or direct precipitation that falls in the pit, we'll collect it and pump it up to our processing plant where we'll crush and mill and produce some of our concentrate. And we'll also recycle that water as much as we can using the best technologies that are available today. So really one of the key deliverables for our pre-feasibility assessment and also our federal permitting process is to look at those environmental impacts in detail, and water is number one on the list.
So the question is, back to the Lake Montaño area, since we own the property adjacent to it and we own the bridge, what exactly are our plans for that property?
Yeah, so I can appreciate there's been a fair bit of chatter on social media around that site. And, when I wasn't here, well, I think I just started with Albemarle when that property was first acquired back in, it must have been the end of 2018 or around that time. We have looked at that property as to what we could do with it. And I think when we look at its proximity to the state park, when we look at its proximity to the lake, when we look at its proximity to the houses, that's why we sit here and go, that's really not a great property for all the reasons that you're raising as to why we don't want to do anything with it. That bridge actually links us to our property that we own on the other side of the interstate. We have to cross over another 2 roads to get to the that 400, 500 acres that sits there. But from a mining point of view, we don't have any plans to put anything there. It's, economically, to take rock, which is, big and heavy and takes a lot of energy to move, it's not really that attractive for us to move it over there anyway. So I'm not sure where some of this chatter has come from or what it's been based in, but, when we look about our feasibilities today, we're very much focused around where the material is in the ground today, which is at the Kings Mountain site where we have a big hole in the ground. We would love to explore options to use our material as a byproduct. There is quarry rock potential. So we're actively looking to develop this recycling ecosystem of how can our materials be used elsewhere. There are a number of byproducts that would come from this mine, and really for us, we want to minimise the waste that we create. We want to make sure that we are respecting the community's wishes, and we don't have any plans. We may have considered it previously, but for all the reasons that you've raised today, that's why we're not actually contemplating anything there.
Okay, thank you.
That's a great question. So the mine closed in the 1980s. At that time, there was no lithium used in electric vehicles. The industry was a fraction of the size of what it was today, and there was a lot of low-cost material that could be extracted in other places of the world. And like many industries, that goes first, right? That serves that small market. As the industry grows, and it's not unlike oil, there's more that's needed. And as that happens, prices go up, and all of a sudden resources that weren't economic before are now economic. And if you look at the quality of this resource, 10 years ago, we would have said, oh, you can't make money on it because prices are so low. Demand has risen so much, prices have gone up so much that there's now an opportunity to go after, and a need to go after these, what in the past were less economic resources, but today are now more economic. Like I said, the oil industry is a good example. You can talk about Saudi Arabia being very low cost, so the oil industry went there. As oil demand goes, all of a sudden Texas comes back, right? Because it's now economic. Same analogy here. So that's why it's attractive, And furthermore, we have a customer base that wants sustainably local source material. They don't want to be reliant on something that's coming from Asia. They want, the Fords, the General Motors, the Teslas, they want material that's made in the US. So this is the largest resource in North America. So that's what makes it attractive to them. Yeah, no, it's a challenging labor environment today, and it's not just here, it's everywhere in the US, and for that matter, in large parts of the world.
So what I would say to that, though, is realistically, if we create an aggressive program at the high school level, I actually think maybe the middle school level, high school, and community college level, we can realistically have that talent pipeline within the next decade. And what I have heard from the community in the 5 years I've been here is I want my kids to have options so they don't have to leave home. And that's what this would do. It would create those highly skilled jobs so that there is that growth in Kings Mountain, so that when your kids go off to college, they don't feel they have to stay somewhere else, that there's a future. And let's think about the bright future that lithium poses. I mean, Eric touched upon it. Electric vehicles are the future. All of the automakers are investing billions of dollars. So becoming part of that ecosystem and supply chain can make someone's entire career. We have to work on it. We have to work on it now. And also, I would say to you, I know we talked about a 20-year life, but that's not the end of the lithium. We'll recycle it. We will make other applications. We will have the world-class research and development that's already going on at the Kings Mountain site. So it's not just end of project, we're gone. We've been in this community for decades. We want to invest, and we want to continue to grow. But we're already doing amazing things. We're already creating amazing jobs at the Kings Mountain site. We have a world-class team. And we are partnering globally, not only with automakers, but with the US Department of Energy, with all the national labs. It's really a jewel in the crown, the work that's being done here and the good people that are doing it.
So the way we'll process the ore is it will basically go through a process of where you crush it and grind it in a plant. And then the way that the lithium is extracted is through flotation. So the lithium comes out, and then the material that's remaining is, this lithium is in a rock that's composed of quartz and feldspar. And so that quartz and feldspar will go out in the tailing stream and become part of the tailing basin. So, not that I know of. We're going to be floating the spodumene, which is the lithium ore. That will be floated off and made into a lithium oxide product that is then goes to a process where they increase that lithium. That's what the plant is doing right now, basically, is they're reprocessing that oxide and make it into a higher concentrated lithium product. So here comes our Henry is our process engineer. So I'm the one that provides him with the feed for the plant. And then he has to grind it up and make a product out of it.
Yeah, so once the ore is extracted from the ground, what we do is, we grab it and, as he said, reduce it in size. And he mentioned flotation. Before that step, there is what is called dense media separation, which is you have lighter material that will sink and lighter material that will float and heavy material that will sink. So the heavy is where the lithium is. So the light material is separated, and then the heavy portion goes forward. Yes, and you produce a portion of your final concentrate there. Then there is an intermediate material because it works based on size and weight. So if it's heavy, it's good. If it's light, it's not good. And then what is not in the right size goes forward, and that gets ground, all of it, to a finer size, smaller material. That's when you float it. Now, in our deposit, there is some mica present. So in order to make a good quality spodumene concentrate or lithium oxide concentrate, we have to remove the mica. Now you use flotation, which is basically what you do when you do your laundry. You put a detergent that makes bubbles, and to those bubbles, the dirt from your clothes attaches. We are doing that in a large scale. That is basically what we're doing. We're adding a frother that makes a bubble, and then the mica attaches to that bubble and comes out. Then we take the rest, which is the good portion, and that goes and gets scrubbed, meaning you just mix it with water, the same material, and then you add a different frother or a different detergent that makes that just the lithium attached to the bubble, and the rest goes away as leftover material, and that's how you produce your concentrate. Now you have a fine concentrate, which is coming from this flotation process that Bill mentioned, and a coarse concentrate that comes from the dense media or the gravity separation. So those two get mixed, and that's our final product. That's how the process works. This is similar to what you use in Florida, the first portion for making potash and things like that. It's a standard. It's used in coal. It's used in different industries. We're not doing anything new. We're just making sure that we use the best technology throughout the different steps and the most advanced processes, or not even the process, but it is all technology that you can really, really modernize based on what we have for measuring things as they go, for understanding how things work. And that's what we are developing, that flow sheet as we go forward at this point.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. So between the interstate and the 161, we're currently trying to figure out what that optimum configuration is going to look like. That's part of why we're here today, is we want to say that we're discussing these options. We want people's input into these options. Today, we don't know. We would like to bring this operation into production. There are a number of trade-offs that we need to do technically, environmentally, even from a community point of view. And really, that's the process that we're starting today. So between the interstate and the 161, there's that irregular shape that's our property. We're trying to figure out what is the best use of that. There are, a couple of easements that run through that. Mm-hmm. The Colonial Pipeline runs through there. There's the gas pipeline. There's a couple of high voltage transmission lines that run through there. So our ability to use that land is somewhat limited given some of those easements. But right now, we're debating, could that be an office complex? Could that potentially be a location for the concentrator? But we haven't set our sights on any one of those solutions. And obviously, crossing the interstate, is that possible? How's that going to work? Right. They're all things that, we're doing. It's why we're building the team. It's why you're going to see people out in the community, doing measurements. It's to help inform what it is. And I think really there are probably more questions than there are answers right now, but we want to understand all your concerns. We want to understand what those impacts may be so that, as we develop these plans, we develop the best plans that takes into considerations everyone's point of view.
Okay.
This picture up here, I'm going to stand up here. Okay. So this is the interstate. This is the bridge that goes over the interstate. This is from the 70s. If anybody can tell us the exact date, I'm curious. We've sort of guessed it's about the 70s. But you can see here that there is all this processed material that sat there. When you look at it today, you wouldn't have any idea that was actually there. So this site has been used extensively. This is the 161 that runs through here now. So just shows that there was a lot of activity that took place at this site historically. So there is a lot of stuff. Vegetation covers it today. And ultimately, what that could be used for in the past, remains to be seen.
Okay.
Yes, so I'll introduce myself. I started working in an underground lead zinc mine in outback Australia. I've worked in copper, I've worked in copper and gold, I've worked in lead, zinc and silver. We have Bill here, who has more than 40 years experience in iron ore. Trevor has worked in a range of commodities globally. So yes, we have hard rock mining experience. That's what we're working through at the moment. So these are the feasibility studies that we're doing today. So the pre-feasibility study, all that is what we're trying to assess today, what that ultimate configuration is going to be. It's going to be much larger than what was mined historically at that site. You know, obviously a rich operating history up on the screen, but you know, they're the things that we'll be coming back to you all on to communicate what our plans are, to communicate what the capacities, what the jobs are going to look like. So that is what me and my team are working on.
As Alex mentioned, we have been approaching residents that own properties where we feel there may be some disturbance, and we don't want to impact your quality of life, right? That's what this is about. We are very invested in this community. We're not coming here to disrupt it. So those are the approaches. I am sure if you feel that the offer was not fair, we certainly can discuss that. In terms of what the specific plans for that area are, I'm not sure we've settled on anything.
That's right. Still to be determined. I think I'm not sure if you're here for the previous gentleman's question, but you know, one of our concerns is just the proximity of those properties to our potential operations, and it's really about, you know, we don't want to impact your quality of life, and you know, happy to catch up after today and just sort of discuss some of your concerns and make sure we're factoring that into our plans.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks for the question. Yeah, great question. So the ore body, and you know, we haven't been able to drill off our property. We know that the ore body is where it is today, and you know, we're essentially, if we're fortunate enough to bring this into operation, we would continue to operate in a similar footprint. Again, I think that's what differentiates our potential project from others that are out there. We know that there is a lot of you know, veins. We've had emails of people that have found white rock in their backyard and interested whether or not it's lithium. We're happy to chat after the fact. But our operations are primarily focused within the boundaries of our existing footprint. No, we haven't settled on a mining rate for this project. So that's something we're continuing to assess at the moment. I'm not sure where the 5,000 comes from. That could be an old historical number.
No, it was on a somewhere or other here.
Oh, the existing plant. Sorry, yes, that is what we're doing today on site. So that is our existing plant where we're producing 5 kilotons of 5,000 tons of lithium hydroxide, and those products are the products that are going into pharmaceuticals and lithium metal. This is a significant ore body, and we're continuing to you know, do those feasibility studies to figure it out. I think when you look at, you know, high quality ore bodies around the world, they typically run for, you know, many decades, and you know, I would like to think we could get there. There's a lot of technical work that we need to do to support that. I think phasing the development is probably how we might approach it, but there's a lot of work, and you know, where we hope to come back and provide updates at these quarterly town halls as to how we're advancing and considering those options. It's a function of economics, it's a function of what's possible environmentally, it's a function of what's possible technically. So we have a lot of work that's ticking along in the background to help inform that decision. Your concern is why we're here tonight. So it's a double-edged sword.
Yes.
We contemplated, you know, how we would approach this, and we thought that it would be better to be transparent. You've probably seen the newspaper articles, you've heard the chatter, what's happening. Would much rather address it openly and allow you all here to ask us these questions. The intention is that, yes, as we progress through these studies, as we progress through these different phases, that we'll be providing updates at a regular basis. What we didn't want to do is sit in a dark room, come up with what we thought was a perfect solution, and present it to you as a done deal. This isn't a done deal. We really want everybody's input. I've sat in on a couple of conversations already where there have been some really good ideas that have come from people that have been sitting around the table going, well, could you do this or you could do that? And sometimes it's like, well, we haven't thought of that. That's actually a really good idea, and we need to make sure we go away and study it. So what we want to do is we want to bring you all along that journey. It's a marathon. We haven't even started training for that marathon, but hopefully this gives you an insight and gives you a confidence that we're going to approach it in a transparent way. We're going to hear your concerns. We're going to have to take actions to go back and figure out how we might address some of those issues, how we might be able to mitigate those things. But this is the journey that we're on. This is a really exciting project. It's not going to happen overnight, but we want to make sure that we are cognizant and recognise the community. We can only be successful if you're successful as well. And that's a big reason why we wanted to come here today, is to really open up that dialogue. You've got the website and the contact details. We want to hear from you all. It's a requirement under IRMA that we actually engage and we hear your thoughts, that concerns are logged and that we address them respectfully. So that's a big part of who we are, and that's a big part of why we're here today, because we want to do it the right way. And if we don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. And I think for everybody, you'd much rather have us do it, because we are going to do it responsibly and in the most sustainable manner. Okay, this is going to touch on a few of us. So the how deep and how wide, subject to the feasibility studies that we're doing. It's, up there you can kind of see what it is at the moment. It's probably full of maybe 100 and something feet of water today. The reclamation is something that Trevor can talk to, because that's something we need to submit at the time of our permit applications. We want your ideas. We've had people that have suggested sunset cruises on the lake. We've had people that have suggested a mountain bike park. We've had zip line suggestions. That closure planning is something that we take seriously as well. And I think if you want to understand what it could look like, it's similar to what it looks like today as well, in terms of the Gateway Trail. But I think Trevor can probably provide a more technical answer around some of the studies and how we'll address closure.
Well, you've already summarized some pretty exciting options, I guess. So yes, I hear you, and not only the pit, but all the other facilities that will remain after the operation is ceased will have to be reclaimed and closed. And I spent about a decade of my career working specifically on that, closing and reclaiming various mine sites across Canada and the U.S. So it's pretty close to my heart, doing that right. Internally, we've got requirements. IRMA is going to be directing us in certain ways, and even in some respects from a regulatory perspective. We have to reach out to the community and identify an appropriate way to repurpose this site after mining is complete. Okay. Typically what I've seen, Alex gave a few examples, but what I've seen is sometimes communities want to repurpose it for more commercial or industrial use. So for example, I was involved in a project in Arizona where the community wanted to install solar panels. So producing green energy was important to them. So some of the old mined facilities were used to install solar panels on that. Other options are to repurpose it again for hiking and recreation. So very much what we see out there today with Gateway Trail. So I think with the addition of the pit after mining is complete, we've got boating opportunities and mountain bike opportunities, as well as the hiking trails that we've got today. The other option that's typically used is just reclaiming it for wildlife use, and not so much on the public trails. So we'll sit down. We have to go through and develop a reclamation and closure plan for our permit to develop the site. So that's a requirement from our permitting perspective. And we also have to keep revisiting that plan as the operations go forward to make sure, say for example, when we're halfway through mining, a number of decades away from now, we want to make sure that the municipal plans and the development plans at King Mountain still align with our original plan that we submitted for our permit. So these closure plans are constantly reassessed over time, and as you get more towards closure, you get a little bit more detailed in the design and start the execution work. We will also be required to submit financial bonding once we align with the community on what our closure plan is. Part of the permitting process is to put bonding and have funds available for the reclamation work as well. So almost I wouldn't say endless, but there's many opportunities that we can look at with your input on how we can reclaim and close this site after mining is complete.
In 2018, we did exploratory drilling, and that was so that we could better understand the ore body and the grade of the resource. And so we completed that drilling program so that we could sort of get to where we are now. At that time, the price did decrease significantly, and then we had COVID. And so now that everything is coming back, we're able to really sit there and understand how we want to grow the lithium business within Albemarle and where it makes sense for us to do that. And as we talked about, we're seeing a lot of localization of automakers here in the South. So the EV supply chain is really focused on growing in the South. So this makes perfect sense for us to be able to serve our customers.
Yeah, the hazardous waste issue, we'll have to assess what kind of waste products that will be derived, and mainly from the processing and conversion facilities. Again, we're still early in the process on the feasibility, pre-feas and feasibility assessments, so that's something that we'll have to assess moving forward. The first, process flow diagrams Henry's working on, who you've met already on the processing side, and those diagrams and that technical work will ultimately, and testing work will ultimately determine what the quality of that potential waste product is from the processing. So more to come on that. It's just we need to advance our technical assessment and testing to give you a straight answer. We don't have any plans to put anything in the public landfill. If we did have any kind of waste, we'd probably first look at developing our own landfills, just to keep it segregated. But those are all options that we need to assess once we really have a firmer understanding on the processing.
So as we move forward, that's an important relationship, right? Because there's so much we probably can do jointly together. To better the community and better the city. And I know the casino is, or the owners, the traditional owners are working on some very robust plans for that area. And so absolutely that's going to be a critical relationship for us going forward. I think that all of this development happening at the same time might seem a bit overwhelming, but it's really, we all want to be good corporate citizens and work together. And so we will not only be talking with the casino, but also other critical businesses in the community. The land that's owned by Albemarle today is publicly available at the deeds office, right? Every time we close a transaction, that paperwork gets filed. So that is absolutely public record and available. In terms of where we go next, I think we're still evaluating that. And so for those property owners that have been approached, those are obviously ones that we're considering, but we're continuing to evaluate that as we build out the plans. So I'll turn it over to Trevor, but I'll just reinforce a comment Alex made earlier. You already have an active quarry in Kings Mountain and Martin Marietta. And so what we would be doing at our site is not different. So
It's a lot larger in scale.
That's correct, but it's an existing operating quarry that's been in existence for many decades. So this is not a new concept to the Kings Mountain community. And that the mine was in operation for 40 some odd years. But certainly you're all accustomed to the procedures that Martin Marietta go through. So it is happening, but I'll hand it to Trevor to elaborate on the studies.
Yeah, I second those two comments. We have an active quarry next door. In terms of dust and air quality, the work that we would be doing in our operation isn't all that different than the mining techniques that they would be using on theirs. We wouldn't be doing anything that would introduce new or different elements that might be considered toxic. So, in addition, we've got we've got almost a really good pilot study right there today sitting on our property. We've got some of the old mining facilities that we can monitor and maintain. So for example, the Pit Lake water quality, it's quite clean. So that we have really good indication using the retrospective data that we have for the property to really evaluate some of those risks. And in terms of moving things forward, that's really the essence of our pre-feasibility study. So I know I can't provide you exact specifics on the air, water, and soil and noise impacts today, But that is the next 2 years of work that we have to first collect that benchmark data. What does the site look like now? What's the current air quality like, considering the highway, the quarry, and some of our operations? Same with the water. What's the current water quality, and how will we expect that to potentially change? And more importantly, what can we do in the feasibility to identify new technologies or new designs that can mitigate any change in the environment? So I can't give you specifics today, but that is really what we're trying to do over the next 2 years, is really assess those components thoroughly.
Not specifically addressing that, but I know there are lots of plans by developers to build new communities within the Kings Mountain community. From an Albemarle point of view, we fully support that, because as we start bringing and creating these jobs, we'd really love opportunities for our employees to live locally. And so I think there are 3 or maybe 4 very large residential projects in the works. And so obviously those developers see the demand there, and that's something that we would love to support. Okay. Anybody else? Wow. Thank you so much. So next steps. I'm a big fan of next steps. So we plan to hold these quarterly. As we move forward into the project development phase, some of them may be themed. We may make Trevor stand up here for 3 hours and talk to you all about permitting and the IRMA standard. But we promise, as we go through this and we have more details to share and provide, we will do exactly that. I think you've all given us a lot of food for thought. Really appreciate the thoughtful questions. Very instructive for us, and that's exactly what we were hoping to get tonight. I know it is a little frustrating that we don't have all the answers, but I think it's better to come to you with ideas rather than tell you what the solutions are. We really want this to be a partnership. I think the next one we'll do at a bigger location, and maybe one with some air conditioning, so we're all a bit more comfortable. But thank you all so much. We will hang out if you want to come up to us individually. I hope you all have a good evening.